Good morning, everyone. You may be seated. Yeah. All right. Okay, we need to get rid of that. Quorum 4B. Yeah. I'm not sure why that's up there. Real quick, yeah. Okay. Boy. Okay, because it's not. Okay. Okay. Time. Yes, thank you. Okay.
Go to meet on the Creston screen. What's the Creston screen? Yours?
Yeah.
Go to meet.
We have that.
Still typing. Make sure none of the viewers are, none of them should be yellow.
No, we have to have that. Does he understand the question you're asking?
Yes.
See, can't be that. It's got to be that.
Screen. Okay.
Well, if we go to the meet screen. No, I think this is the way it's supposed to be. It's a follow.
Deselect the yellow ones so they turn gray. Be in meet,
Mm-hmm.
and then deselect the yellow ones, so. Try it up at the bottom.
No. Oh, I see what he's saying.
Okay, wait, there we go. You did it. Yay.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay, anything we need to get on the record on behalf of the state before bringing the jurors in?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
On behalf of the defendant?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mrs. Harper?
Your Honor, do you want the witness to be in the stand?
Yes. Yeah, if you could bring. Good morning, officer. You're still under oath.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
All rise for the jury. You may be seated, ladies and gentlemen. All right, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
All right, welcome back to courtroom 4B. At this time, we will continue direct examination of Officer Detweiler. You may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Officer Detweiler.
Morning, sir.
Hopefully, I'm going to pick up where I left off. You had discussed the shooting in pretty good detail, right? Do you recall that?
I don't recall the last question, no, so I don't know.
Okay.
You remember what we were talking about? I don't recall the last question.
Okay. Yeah, that's where I was headed. You wear a body worn camera, correct?
Yes, sir.
Can you talk to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury about the body-worn camera that essentially you wore back in December of 2020?
Type or,
You don't have to go into specific details, but just in general, what does it do? What type of things does it capture? Things like that.
body-worn camera at that particular time, we had some criteria as to when we would have to activate it. It was something that I would wear on the exterior of whatever outer garment I had on, and I could physically activate it with a touch of a button. So it had to be activated manually in order to capture anything. At that particular time, with the camera that we used, it was silent, so it would capture video for the entirety of the time that you had a look back, or it had a capture, well, it didn't have a look back, it would hit record, but it would be without audio until about a minute in, and then it would pick up audio. So it was a manually activated device.
And I believe at this time it had a look back period, right? Where you hit it, it recorded it, and then, but without,
50 seconds or a minute with no audio, is that, yeah.
okay. You've switched body cams at least a couple of times since then, is that correct? Or types?
Just one.
Were you wearing a body-worn camera on this night in question?
I was.
And when did you turn that on?
As soon as we made the decision to walk up the driveway is when I reached up and hit my camera to activate it.
Okay. So as soon as you decided to go approach Mr. Hill or the individual in the garage, who you didn't know him at that time, correct? You didn't know the individual's name who was in the garage?
No.
Okay. So as soon as you approached decided to approach the individual in the garage, you activated your body-worn camera, correct?
Yes.
Have you since viewed your body-worn camera from that evening?
Yes.
Okay. It doesn't capture you walking up to the garage, correct?
Does not.
Okay. What are your thoughts as to why that happened?
I do not know. I can tell you that I believe that I had activated my body camera when we made the decision to approach. And when I realized the camera wasn't on, which was after the shooting had occurred, I turned it on a second time.
Okay. Did it have a light on it at that time to indicate whether it was on or off?
A red light, but you must understand that when we made the decision to walk up to an unknown, I was not looking down at my camera. So I reached up to activate it. I stayed trained on the garage at the time and never looked down again at my camera. It wouldn't be very safe.
Right. Until after the shooting, then you noticed, oh crap, my camera's
For
not
whatever
on.
reason, I had looked down, realized I didn't see a red light, activated it a second time.
And when you activated the second time, that's when it activated the 60-second look back up until the time you hit it. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Officer Detweiler, I want you to take a look at what's been previously marked as Exhibit B as in Victor.
Are you getting ready to play it?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will be seeing different body-worn camera throughout the trial. These videos have been redacted, so you're not going to see everything in its entirety. And they've been redacted based upon decisions that the court has made as to what would be appropriate and proper for the jurors to view. So you may play it at this time.
Thank you. This is essentially the first frame of that State's Exhibit V. Officer Detweiler, what do you see here?
That is me. That is my handgun and my handgun flashlight. That would be the white vehicle that's inside the garage and in the garage.
This is after the shooting, is that correct?
I believe so, but based on this still, I'm going to say yes, but I don't.
No, for sure. I'll play some more.
Yes, sir.
pause it at 6 seconds into the video. This
Yes,
is
sir.
after the shooting.
Yes.
Play the rest of the video. Going to pause it at 43 seconds in, Officer Detweiler. What's happening here? What's going on?
This is just after a shooting, this shooting where we are actively looking for a firearm. So Officer Coy is commanding, let me see your hands, and then there's some activity where there's no response to the commands, and there's just it's an active looking for a threat.
All right. And what's that item there? You see a cell phone?
It appears to be.
Use your pointer, if that pointer is still up there.
To point to the,
Yes, point to the device that looks to be a cell phone. Is that similar, or if not the same cell phone that you saw the individual holding as he was walking out of the garage?
if it's the same phone, then yes, it looks like
Okay.
an illuminated.
And above that, we see a pack of cigarettes, is that right?
Appears to be.
Don't play the rest of the video. And 1 minute in, is that where you hit the, you turned on your body-worn camera again?
Yes, if the look back period is 1 minute, then 1 minute would be correct. And
Give me support.
okay. 9030, we need officer support.
I copy. 94, you copy?
No, I didn't.
She's asking for officer support.
Let's stop the video at 1 minute 29 seconds in. We see someone coming out of that house, correct?
Yes.
Without telling the jury what that person said, what did you say to that person?
I instructed that person to go back inside the house.
And for safety reasons, correct?
Correct.
Pausing at 1 minute 52 seconds in. Do you recognize any of the officers that are viewable here?
No.
Yes, 94. If they're already clear on the zone, if they can start heading that way, help me get a scene secured.
I copy. Any cars left on the zone, if you could start that way. 1054 Overland Drive.
2-4 head.
20 head.
Yep. Yep.
What's going on?
Copy.
9190, channel 4.
9190.
Free air for officer support.
Affirm. 1054 Overland Drive.
Okay, I'll be en route. 94, I'm also officer support.
94, he's copy.
Keep the air clear.
Officer Detweiler, that was your body-worn camera that you wore that night.
Yes.
And again, as the judge stated, this is a partial recording. There's other things that were recorded, correct?
Yes. This is Officer Coy's body-worn camera.
Pause it at 21 seconds in. Is that you who's coming into view there?
Yes.
You reach up and you turn on your flashlight, is that accurate?
Yes.
And this is when you're looking into the garage, seeing the individual in the garage, and you want to illuminate him.
Yes.
Does Mr. Coy have a flashlight out at that time that you recall?
I don't recall.
And so the time, let me back up. So about 4 seconds into the Officer Coy's body-worn camera, 4 or 5 seconds, that's when you exit your vehicle. Is that the point in time where you have your brief conversation before approaching the garage?
That's correct.
And again, Officer Detweiler, what time do you draw your weapon?
The decision, it would have been upon approach up the driveway.
Okay, so sometime between the time you shone your flashlight and the time you got all the way up to the driveway, you drew your weapon.
Yes.
Did Mr. Coy have his weapon drawn?
I believe so.
And how were you carrying your weapon?
It would have been in like a low, it's called a low ready position, so it's out and in front of me, but pointed down.
Okay. Your Honor, permission for the witness to stand up so to show the jurors what a low ready position is.
She may.
Thank you.
It would have been pulled from the holster and in this position here, so down in front.
And thank you for that demonstration. What's the purpose of that?
Well, action beats reaction, so I'm going to have my firearm out to eliminate the need to pull it from a holster, so it's in a position, based on what we're going to investigate, it needs to be in a position to be ready. That's part of protocol.
Okay. Playing at 36 seconds in.
Put your fucking hands out to the side. Hands out to the side now. Roll to your stomach now. Yeah. Hey, don't get fucking close. I can't see his fucking hand. Get your hand up from underneath you now. You got a medic coming. Don't move, dude. Fuck. Roll over, dude.
90-30, any additional?
Get me support.
So, Officer Detweiler, do those videos truly and accurately depict what happened that night?
Yes. Well, they capture video of what happened. They don't capture.
All of the things that the video may not have picked up. So, after the shooting happened, what did you do? I believe you talked a little bit about this yesterday. You went and started to get scene tape. I believe that's where your video left off.
I believe I moved my vehicle first. I moved my cruiser because it was parked in the middle of the road, again, so that the medics could come in. And then I, for whatever reason, began securing the scene.
Okay. At one point in time, did you go back up to the house and provide handcuffs to secure the individual in the garage?
Yes.
Did you do anything else of significance that night? Well, I'm sorry, let me back up. You had a conversation with the investigator, correct?
Yes.
Gave him a general idea of where individuals were at the time the shooting happened?
Yes.
Like where you were, where that individual in the garage was, where Coy was?
Yes.
And then later on, you provided a more complete statement of what happened and the order of events. Is that right?
Correct.
And this location where you were on Oberlin, that's located in Franklin County, Ohio.
We would stipulate to it.
Okay. You can go ahead and answer the question, but the court will accept the stipulation.
Thank you.
Yes, Franklin County.
All right. Officer Detweiler, this isn't easy for you, correct?
It is not.
Thank you for being here. Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Cross-examination?
May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Officer Detweiler.
Morning, sir.
We've met before, correct? We know each other, correct?
Yes.
Thank you for being here. I want to kind of start where Mr. Pearson left off on the concept of the video, right?
Yes, sir.
He asked you if it was a fair and accurate depiction. When you watch Officer Coy's body-worn camera, that's not what you're seeing, correct?
Correct.
At the scene, you're at a different angle.
Yes.
You're focused on different things, correct?
Yes.
What you're saying is what was captured on there is what it is from whatever perspective where that body-worn camera device is.
That is correct.
That device may be facing one way and an officer's head another way, correct?
Yes,
That device doesn't pick up what an officer perceives, correct?
correct.
And more importantly, that device doesn't interpret what an officer may, what he or she may perceive and interpret from that perception, correct?
Correct.
You're trained, or you have training with regards to perceptions, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, back in 2020, you mentioned this on direct to Mr. Pearson, you were a field teaching, back in 2020, were you a field training officer?
I was.
Please tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury the components of that.
Field training officer is an officer that a recruit who has graduated from the academy is now an officer will go out and complete 4 months of field training. Again, we talked yesterday about practical application of the things that have been learned in the academy. And then under a field training officer, depending on the phase, you're teaching them those practical applications. So I am still currently a field training officer.
Okay. And back in December of 2020, you were a field training officer.
Yes.
It's my understanding you're also a certified OPATA instructor.
Yes.
Tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what that means. What's OPATA?
Ohio Peace Officer Training Academy. Every officer in the state of Ohio is certified through OPATA. That's where you get your peace officer certificate. Within that course work, there are instructors who have the certifications to teach those who are trying to get certifications. I also have certifications through OPATA to train the trainer, meaning I can train other people to train potential officers.
And you actually train people in use of force situations, correct?
I do not train use of force, so I'm not a use of force trainer.
I apologize. So you're not certified in that?
No, sir.
You've received use of force training.
Yes.
And is that something you receive every year while you're a Columbus police officer?
Yes, we're required to do that.
You learn it in the academy,
Yes.
you learn it on the job, correct?
Yes.
And then you have to learn it or you're trained on it each and every year.
Yes.
Okay. They talk about case law, they talk about standards, things of that nature, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Besides that type of training, you also have to train every year on your firearm, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what that entails.
Every year, Columbus Police, we have a variety of different required trainings. One of those required trainings is handguns. We have to go through the OPATA handgun course. We also have to go through the OPATA shotgun course and other types of shoot, don't shoot type situations. But that's an annual training that we do every year.
Part of that training, do you go to the range and be educated in those aspects?
Yes.
And is that both a classroom and a practical application out in the field?
It can be if there's new updates that are required in a classroom. For the most part, it's just shooting your firearm.
And then is there also a shoot, don't shoot course, so to speak, or scenario that you're put through for training?
Yes.
And that's done to try to expose officers or keep officers alert onto potential dangers, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And explain to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury how that course works.
It might be moving targets or targets that just face on you. Those targets would have a variety of different pictures on them that would depict whether it's threats or non-threats. And your job is to acquire that target and determine if it's a threat.
They're trying to train you on a perceived threat, correct?
Yes.
If you perceive a deadly threat, what are you trained to do in that situation?
Respond with deadly force.
Okay. And in that setting, describe the setting for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury when that training happens.
We've had those trainings in off-site locations, but the last training we received was in our range where the targets would turn and face, so they're on a time target, so they're not facing you, then they're facing you, and you have to make a decision, and then they face away, or they could be a moving target that's moving in a different direction.
You know something's coming, right?
Yes.
In those situations. And you actually have an instructor behind you making sure that you're facing the right direction and everything. And safety is of utmost importance, correct?
Yes.
The lighting, well lit, correct?
Correct.
Earphones on, everything like that, correct? Okay, not like the picture that you saw in the video with the darkness and things like that.
No.
It's a controlled setting,
It's a controlled setting.
well lit, well spaced out, as safe as possible.
Yes.
Okay. And in there, sometimes the target, when are you trained to stop shooting at a target or threat, so to speak?
When the threat is ended.
Okay. Is there any definition of that?
I don't know how to clearly define that.
Does one shot, when the threat is, how are you trained to know that the threat is stopped?
When the threat is no longer, a threat. So,
In the course, for example, when the sign turns the other way,
correct,
or if the poster goes down,
right.
that is when the threat is stopped?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you trained to injure somebody when you believe the situation lead for use of deadly force?
No, sir.
Are you trained to kill somebody?
We're trained to shoot center mass.
Okay. Now, with regards to Midwatch, it's my understanding with Midwatch that your responsibilities around Midwatch is a much greater area, correct?
It can be, yes. It's the entire zone.
In the entire zone. First shift, second shift, third shift, their primary area is a specific precinct, correct?
Yes,
Okay. So the idea of Midwatch is, hey, when the shifts are changing, we need people out there to respond to runs in a bigger area.
yes,
Okay. And you had worked with Adam on numerous occasions on Midwatch, correct?
correct.
Have you've been on many runs with Adam, correct?
Many runs.
Many calls, situations like that?
Yes,
Okay. So based on when you're trained in a police officer, you're learning to become a police officer, and your everyday experiences, Officer Detweiler, are you trained to look for reasonable articulable suspicion?
yes.
What does that mean to you, Officer Detweiler?
It's the standard by which we have the authority to stop or question or even search on some levels anybody that we believe there's suspicious activity.
If you believe there's reasonable suspicious activity, are you required to investigate?
Yes,
You can't stop and say, no, I'm not going to go forward.
no,
Okay. So it gives you the ability to investigate, maybe ask questions, find out what's going on, right?
correct.
Does it mean do you use that on a daily basis?
Yes,
So you've used it thousands of times over your 13 years. In a situation when you believe you have reasonable articulable suspicion to investigate, sometimes when you investigate, I would believe that there's nothing going on.
yeah, the outcome would be yes,
Sometimes there may lead to more investigation of potential crime going on.
yes,
Sometimes you might actually stop a crime, correct?
correct.
So because you believe that there's reasonable articulable suspicion to investigate doesn't mean that that's what's actually happening.
Correct.
You're trying to piece together what's not making sense, or, some type of nefarious activity may be going on.
Correct.
It doesn't mean that absolutely is going on, correct?
Correct.
And you've been wrong before on whether or not reasonable articulable suspicion led to something.
Yes.
Happens all the time.
Happens all the time.
What is roll call for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury?
Roll call would be, it's prior to shift, or if I have a 7 p.m. start time, at 7 p.m., the expectation is that all officers that are present and accounted for that shift would be sitting in a room or at the same table in the same location, and you would be getting maybe updates from the previous shift on anything that might be happening that day, things to watch out for. Various things are going to get covered during that roll call by your sergeant.
Are there different topics that come up in roll call, or based on your experience and training, of times of the year when you're alerted to look for certain types of crimes?
Yes,
Is Christmas one of those?
Christmas is one.
Explain for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
Obviously, property crime is high. The rate of packages that are being delivered or left on porches, just thefts of items from people's yards. That's a common theme.
Okay. And based on your experience, do you find that those go up during the holiday time?
They do.
On or off?
Probably on.
Okay. Excuse us a moment, ladies and gentlemen. Counsel, please approach. may be seated, everyone. Thank you very much. Okay, the objection's overruled.
Your Honor, may I proceed?
You may proceed.
I think where I left off, so based on your experience, that's something to consider at different times of the year.
Correct.
Okay. Now, let's turn to December 22nd of 2020, okay? And where were you positioned when the run came out and you were sent on the run?
I believe it was either at the sub or somewhere in the area of 11th and Cleveland.
Okay. And how long did it take you to get to Oberlin? You didn't do lights and sirens, you didn't do that, you just drove there on a normal
A
course?
few minutes, less than 5 minutes.
Okay. If I told you that if you Google from where you were when you marked in to when you got there, it would take about 11 minutes, would you have any reason to disagree with that?
I would disagree just because of time of day and,
Okay. Because at night it's much faster.
yes, sir.
Okay, so if I Googled it right now, it was 11 minutes. At night, it's going to be faster than that.
Correct.
Okay. You weren't timing it, correct?
No,
So when you say 5 minutes, you believe that that's about as long as it took?
correct.
Could be a little bit longer, could be a little bit shorter. Okay. And where did you park? Where did you park when you pulled up?
Basically in the middle of the street, offset to the left, so left offset from Officer Coy's cruiser, so behind him.
Okay. And if I may, Your Honor, and I'm going to use different numbers, Your Honor, or I'm not going to admit these because the government has them already. Does that make sense? Yeah. I don't have access to that system, so I'll try to use some. May I approach the May I approach the witness
You may.
without tripping?
Yeah, without hurting yourself, yes.
I'm handing you what's been marked for identification purposes, Defendant's Exhibit B. Could you take a look at that? And you were shown that yesterday, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so may I have the OMO, Your Honor?
You may.
So when you pulled in onto Overland, you're actually coming down this way, correct, towards the parked vehicle?
I believe I'm headed west, so I've just turned on Oberlin. I don't recall how many houses are back when I first make the turn, but that is Cruiser 9031, and I park offset to the left behind, not directly behind, several feet behind, and in the middle of the road.
Would you use the pointer to take the path and show where you believe you ended up parking?
I would have driven up the road here, and then I'd park somewhere in this.
Okay, and you testified, thank you, Your Honor. And you testified yesterday that you then moved it in order for the medics to get in there.
Correct.
And where you parked was based on your training, correct?
Well, where I parked was past the location of the dispatched run, but there were no vehicles that I recall, and I know that when I pulled onto the street, that silver SUV was not in front of the dispatch location, but I did observe Officer Coy up there, which leads me to believe that that's where I should go.
Okay, and when you first got there and you got out of your car, you testified something that was a code 4. What's a code 4 again?
Code 4 is, to me, again, this is me, that I am not needed.
That's what you were probably
I'm
hoping.
going to have a conversation that there's nothing for me to do. Again, it's just referring to the run in general, that it was over.
Okay, and so in that situation, that wasn't your understanding, correct?
That was not my understanding.
And based on your conversation with Mr. Coy, at that point in time, it was developed, hey, something's not making sense here, so to speak.
Correct.
Okay, we need to do further investigation.
Yes.
Okay, now, did you need any more communication from him to continue to investigate?
Very little.
Why?
Well, one, we have the same training, but second, we've been working together for, my entire career has been on Zone 4. My entire career was spent taking runs with Officer Coy. So we don't need to have a lot of conversation in order to understand what our objective is.
Okay, are you friends outside of work with Officer Coy?
I would say we're friends, but no, we don't hang out outside of work.
Would you lie for Officer Coy?
I would not.
Would you hide anything for Officer Coy?
No,
Would you do that for any officer?
no,
Would you ever do that if you were testifying?
no.
So based on the conversation, well, so as you pull in, you realize, I think you just testified, that the car wasn't parked in the right spot.
Yes, sir. So
The initial 1054.
initial call was that the silver SUV was parked in front of 1054, I believe it was, and that it had been turning its engine on and off. It came in as a 16, would have been more like a suspicious person, suspicious vehicle. No one normally calls in on vehicles that they recognize. When I pulled onto the street, it was no longer parked in front of that particular address. It had been obviously moved or relocated up beyond, is it 1060? It would be to the west of that.
So before you got out of the car, you realize, hey, it's a suspicious person or suspicious vehicle, it's been moved, you're getting out of the vehicle, now you realize after the conversation with Adam Coy that there's something maybe more.
Correct.
It could be nothing, correct?
Could be nothing.
It could be an ongoing crime, correct?
Could be an ongoing crime,
It
correct?
could be something that needs more investigation.
Yes.
So you then decide in your mind to go forward with reasonable articulable suspicion to investigate.
Yes.
Okay. What do you do next?
Well, once we determined that he was inside the garage, the gentleman was inside the garage, it was apparent that we needed to have a conversation. He was not entering the home. He did not go to the front door. He was just standing inside of the garage that was not illuminated, and
So with,
have to decide to go have a conversation.
so with regards to the illumination, I think you testified to Mr. Pearson on direct that you initially saw him in the way back of the garage over kind of in front of the car.
Yes,
Okay. The video doesn't pick any of that up, correct?
it does not.
So you had observations well in advance of what Mr. Pearson showed on the body worn camera.
Yes,
So at first, the person's kind of in the front of the car, you indicate.
yes,
And then it's my understanding that the person comes from the front of the car and then faces the outside, faces sideways of the garage.
yeah, back to the passenger door of the vehicle, facing what looked to be an interior door to the home.
Okay, so if the interior of you're out here, if the jury is where you are, down there,
Okay,
okay? And the car is right here where this is. At first, he's at the front of the car. Then you see him facing the inside of the garage, facing this way, correct?
yes,
Okay. You were able to see that, but I think you testified yesterday you could only see the shouldered areas and stuff like that.
when yes, initially, yes. When he was inside the garage toward the front of the vehicle, I'm obviously not very tall, so, and I'm quite a distance away, so I can just see that he's in the garage. I can't see what he's doing. And then as he moves to the side, I mean, I still can't see all of his body.
And at what point did you draw your weapon from the holster?
It would have been upon the decision to approach up the driveway, it would have come out.
Now, when you first are approaching the driveway and you have your weapon out, you can't see individual things in the garage, correct?
Not unless they're illuminated with a flashlight.
Okay. But there's no light inside the garage.
No, sir.
The fact that when you first looked at the garage and it was completely dark with the door open, what did that come across to your, what did you take into account for that?
Well, it's odd. That neighborhood's, there's property crime in that neighborhood, so an open garage could suggest they either forgot to leave they forgot the garage was open. And that's an open sign for burglary or somebody to steal.
All right. And so then when you saw the person in there, what did you do at that point in time, Officer Detweiler?
Well, that was the understanding that we need to have a conversation.
And when you mean, I apologize. When you mean conversation, you mean, is that the same as duty to investigate further?
Correct.
Okay. Even though you have your weapon out, you're still investigating. You don't know if anything's been done wrong yet or anything like that. You're investigating.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And at that point in time, do you remember Officer Coy giving the individual in the garage commands?
Yes, he asked them to come out.
Okay. Do you know what specific words he used?
I do not.
Okay. All right. Something to say, hey, come out.
Correct.
And based on that, did you hear anything from the individual in the garage say anything back to my client?
I did not.
Okay. You're not saying it didn't. You're not saying it did. He didn't say anything or did not say anything. You didn't hear anything.
I did not hear anything.
All right. And you indicated to Mr. Pearson on direct that he came out it wasn't immediate. It wasn't extra slow. It was somehow kind of deliberate.
It's just Right, correct.
Now, are you at this point in time when you're observing him in the garage in the different positions in relation to Adam Coy?
Officer Coy made a diagonal approach. There was a large tree, so he made a diagonal approach. I came up the driveway. So again, we're coming up in this manner. And
So
I
he is-
am,
He is to your left.
yes, sir.
Is he in front of you or behind you, or even with you?
I think he's slightly in front of me,
Okay.
I believe.
And how far apart from one another you guys? So you started at greater distance, and then you came closer together.
Yes,
You coming straight up the driveway,
yes,
and then Adam Coy coming from the other yard around the tree that way.
yes.
Okay. Is it fair to say you couldn't see what Adam Coy was seeing at that point in time?
I could not.
Okay. You could only see what straight ahead from you?
Correct.
Okay. And did your positioning stay that way as you guys approached?
It did.
Okay. Now, you saw the individual coming towards you, correct?
Yes.
Could you ever see the right side of his body from where you are, kind of straight ahead?
No.
Okay. So his body was turned away, diagonally away from you?
When he turned and he brought the cell phone, he had the cell phone up. I looked right at that cell phone. Everything on the right side was either down, behind, or obstructed.
Okay. What does the term blading mean into police terms?
Blading, the easiest way to describe it would be if you are a boxer and you're going to take a athletic kind of offset position to somebody. You're not going to stand face to face with them. You're turning your body so that you're at an angle.
Was his body at an angle in relation to you, to the right side of his body?
When he was coming around the corner of the car, yes.
Okay. So you see him coming forward towards you, and then he turns towards the car,
Yes,
based on your memory and perception?
yes.
Okay. Were you able to see his right hand at that point?
No.
What did you think when you saw the left hand with the phone like that?
It's an unusual way to exit. I looked right at it, if that was the intent. So, I mean,
Your eyes are focused on that.
yeah, I looked right at the phone.
Did you ever take your eyes off the phone prior to the shots being fired?
Again, this happened in seconds, so I don't recall, but I don't believe so.
Okay. So now you say the individual is, if I'm walking towards you, and then comes a little bit like this to the right of the car, correct?
Yes,
He's to the left of the car's to the right of it.
yes,
And you can see this part, but you can't see down here, lower right.
correct.
Okay. And you say it's at the point where he gets to the end of the car, he's more bladed or less bladed?
Yes,
From your perspective.
it's an angle. If the car bumper is curved, he's walking on the curve around the bumper.
When he gets to the car, what happens next, Officer Detweiler?
When he gets
To the end of the car.
gun, he's got a gun in his other hand.
Who says gun?
Boy,
Okay. Did you see a gun?
I did not.
Next thing you hear shots.
Yes,
Okay. Why didn't you shoot?
I did not have a view or anything on that right side or whatever the perceived, I did not perceive it's not my view.
Did you perceive a deadly threat
Not
from your angle?
Not from my angle.
Okay. Because the right side was away from you, so to speak, from where your angle.
Yes,
Okay. Had you perceived a deadly threat, would you have fired?
I would have fired.
You didn't fire because you didn't perceive that threat that Adam Coy perceived.
Correct.
Okay. You went to approach, and Adam Coy told you not to.
Yes,
Are you trained that, tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you're training even if someone has been a recipient of a firearm shot and they're on the ground, could they still be a threat?
yes,
Has that happened before? You trained that that's a known thing.
yes,
In that situation, Adam Coy told you, stop, get away. I need to see his hands.
yes.
Okay. Any doubt in your mind that Adam Coy believed the person had a gun?
No,
At that point in time, when he ordered him to show his hands, and then rolled over, what did you do at that point in time, Officer Detweiler?
at some point in time, we had switched positions, so I don't know if you can see that I had moved to the left. I was still looking actively for the firearm.
Okay. Did you find a firearm?
I did not.
Okay. Did you see a set of keys?
I don't recall at the time, but since I've seen the video or the photos, yes.
Okay. I'm just going to use again D. May I approach the witness?
You may.
I'm hanging what's been marked for identification purposes, defendants again, Exhibit T. And again, we won't be admitting this because the government has it marked already.
That's fine.
Could you take a look at that and tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury if you recognize that?
I don't recognize, I mean, I know what these are, but I don't recognize, I don't remember seeing them.
You don't remember seeing that exact set?
No.
Okay, thank you so much. That makes a lot less questions. You've been in situations with Adam Coy, 10 situations prior to this?
Yes.
Every type of run together?
Yes.
When you realized there was no gun, did you see Adam Coy?
Yes.
Was it fair to say he was upset?
Yes.
Describe for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what you saw when you guys realized there was no weapon.
Well, I'm not sure that I realized that there was no weapon. We didn't find anything around him. There was just, obviously there's an extreme amount of emotion that occurs. That's, no officer intends to do that. So unless there's a reason, he was visibly upset.
When you are trained, you're trained on threats, correct?
Yes.
There's non-deadly threats, there's deadly threats, correct?
Yes.
You can have an actual threat, someone with a gun pointed at the person, correct?
Correct.
You don't know if the gun's loaded or not, correct?
Correct.
Person may have a knife or something like that, or a bat or a crowbar, right?
Yes.
That's an actual threat, correct?
That's actual deadly threat. Yes.
You're also trained on perceived deadly threats, correct?
Yes.
Someone making a motion as though they're grabbing from their waistband a weapon.
Yes.
Someone with something in their hand that may be mistaken for a weapon. That's still a perceived deadly threat, correct? And that's part of the training that you go through.
Yes.
Okay. And you're trained on the case law and everything that officers will make mistakes sometimes.
Yes.
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
You may.
Officer Detweiler, thank you for your time. Appreciate you being here.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Officer Detweiler, I just have a few questions, and hopefully we can get you out of here. Mr. Collins was asking you questions about training with respect to being in an officer-involved shooting. Do you recall that question?
Training.
Let me rephrase. You've had training on what to do in an officer-involved shooting, correct?
I'm not sure. I don't quite understand your question.
All right. Let me see if I can rephrase it better. You've been trained on the use of deadly force, correct?
Yes.
And you've been trained and gone to training and seminars about, the law surrounding use of force, correct?
Yes.
Do some of those trainings entail individuals or former police officers from other states and other jurisdictions?
No.
Okay. Just local officers talking to you about those things?
I haven't been to outside training on officer-involved shootings, no.
Okay. At the time of the shooting, who was closer to the individual in the garage? Was it you or Mr. Coy? Or were you about equally distant from him?
I believe we were about equal distant, just on the same angle.
You stated that when the individual was coming out of the garage, he had a cell phone in his left hand and was walking out of the garage. Do you recall that question?
Yes.
And do you recall saying that you saw text bubbles as he was walking out?
I did, yes.
Okay. Could you read what those text bubbles said? Any words in them? Or did you just see the bubbles?
No, just the green bubbles.
Did you take that to mean anything?
With several green bubbles in a row, which leads me to believe it's a one-sided conversation.
And again, you didn't have a lot of time between the time you saw the green bubbles and the time the shots happened, correct?
Second.
Seconds. Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Recross?
Thank you. Briefly, Your Honor. Officer Detweiler, how do you feel that you were focused on that cell phone?
Sir?
How did it make you feel after the fact that you were focused on that cell phone?
Foolish.
Why?
Because if it was a distraction, I was distracted. I looked right at it.
And you indicated that you could not see the right side of the person coming across the car, the right hand, the right arm, or anything like that prior to the shots.
Obstructed from my view.
And you didn't shoot because you didn't perceive a deadly threat towards you or towards Mr. Coy.
Correct.
Had you perceived that, would you have shot?
I would have shot it.
Thank you, officer.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Okay, Officer Detweiler. Okay, you can step down. State may call their next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I thought there was a sentence that said this trial is taking more than one. Let me take a second look at it when I get to my office. Okay. Good morning. If you please raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, as you shall answer unto God under the pains and penalties of perjury?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may be seated.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to ask if you pull that microphone a little closer to you, and it is important that you speak into the microphone so that the ladies and gentlemen of the jury can hear you. Yeah, you can raise this sheriff as high as it can go. Okay. Okay. It's also important that when responding to questions, that you do so verbally. It's kind of difficult to understand.
Yes, sir.
All right. So for the record, if you please state your name, spelling your last.
Benjamin Branford, last name B as in boy, Roger, Adam, Nora, Foxtrot, Ocean, Roger, David.
Thank you. You may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Morning.
Officer Branford, where are you employed?
With the Columbus Division of Police.
And how long have you been employed there?
Going on 12 years, sir.
Okay. And what duty and capacity are you employed?
I'm a patrol officer.
All right. Where is your, do you have a specific precinct or jurisdiction that you're a patrol officer?
Yes, sir. 3 precinct. Mostly the Clintonville area.
Have you been employed as a patrol officer that entire time in that 3 precinct?
Yes, sir.
And prior to going and becoming a patrol officer for the Columbus Division of Police, did you have any other law enforcement job?
No, sir.
Okay. Do you have any prior military experience?
Yes, sir.
Where?
Was with the United States Army, both active and reserve.
So tell us the type of things that you do as a patrol officer on 3 Precinct.
As patrol officer, I'm responsible for patrolling my cruiser district, the precinct when available, and taking dispatch runs as they're dispatched, or I can conduct pickup runs as I see incidents unfold.
Okay. And how do you respond to being called out to a run?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
You respond with that microphone that's on your chest? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Do you also have a computer in your cruiser?
We do.
Do you have a specific partner or anyone that you work with?
From time to time, I work with a partner, but no, it's just based on who's there at the time.
Okay. And what time of day do you work?
I work evenings, third shift from 11 p to 7 a.
Were you working that shift on December 22nd, 21st or 22nd, 2020?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury about your activities that night? Do you recall them?
Like all the activities, or
Just
leading up to that?
Yeah, when you came on to work, probably around midnight. What do you recall?
Okay, there was 4 of us that were at work that night on our precinct. We didn't have a sergeant. We did have a covering sergeant. I cannot recall who that was, but there was 4 officers assigned to that precinct that night. We were all in individual cruisers. Just prior to the incident in question, we were called out for either a robbery or robbery in progress at a different location. All 4 of us responded to that run. Took a while to resolve that run, which we all had to go to with lights and sirens. Ultimately ended up being not a robbery or a robbery in progress. It was some kind of disturbance between family members, unauthorized use of motor vehicle, I believe.
Okay.
So once we finished that, we'd all went our separate ways to, I assume, I can't speak for the other officers, but I went up to North High Street to start working on that incident report.
All right. So did you get to North High Street to start working on that incident report?
I did.
All right. And what happened after that, Officer Branford?
Well, while I was working on the incident report, I heard an officer come over the air and state shots fired. I wasn't sure who it was. I thought it was Officer Detweiler. And I looked at my computer to find out where that location was, that officers were involved in an incident. And once I figured out where I needed to get to, I turned on my lights and sirens and proceeded to that location.
Okay. And with that, is that what you're supposed to do?
Yes, sir.
About how long did it take you to get there?
I would guess 5 to 7 minutes.
Okay. So was this a lights and sirens call?
Yes, sir.
All right. So this was a high priority run.
Yes, sir.
Can you discuss the priority of runs?
Priorities of runs?
Yes.
Well, there's several priorities, one being the highest level, and I believe 9 being the lowest. You typically, on the computer dispatch system, you're typically sent on runs roughly between 1 and 5. I believe 5, maybe 4 even. I think it's 5, like something we get called too often is like 16C, noise complaint, especially in the college area that I work. There's people that play the radios loud. That's like a level 5. Something higher priority where shots are fired, such as this, would be a 1.
Okay. So this would be the highest level call?
Yes, sir.
All right. Did you know whether an officer was shooting or had shot someone or had been shot?
I did not at the time.
So this is a high priority run. You turn on your lights and sirens and you try and get there as quick as possible. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And I'm sorry if I asked you this question before. Do you recall how long it took you to get there?
No, I'd have to look. You can see there's a en route and a arrive button, and assuming that I press those in that kind of a situation, that might annotate it, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. So an arrive button, talk about what that is.
In the cruiser computer system, there's a dispatching system or program that once the dispatcher sends you the run, you're to acknowledge it. In a high priority or a high stress situation like this critical incident, there's been times where I can't speak for other officers, but I may not have pressed the button to show that I'm en route or even that I'm arrived.
Okay, so there's a button that you have located in your cruiser that signifies and provides a signal to where dispatch that you are at a particular location?
Yes, assuming, there are some other assumptions with that. Assuming you are, the dispatch knows that you're going. I mean, typically on a run like this, most of the area, precinct and zone tends to head towards that location because of the priority. So at that point, I did not mark on the air and say, or that I recall, I didn't mark on the air and say 33 en route.
Yeah, because your biggest goal was to get there, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, that was your objective, to get there. What about the lower priority runs, like the noise complaints and those sorts of things? Do you hit your arrive button when you arrive for those?
You're supposed to, yes.
So you arrive to Oberlin, and what do you see and what do you do, Officer Branford?
Well, the route that I took, I went southbound on Shattuck Avenue, which intersected into Oberlin Drive. And once I turned west on Oberlin Drive, there was another cruiser that was already there. I believe it was Officer Lisco's cruiser. And I don't recall if I saw her get in her trunk, getting out of the vehicle, or what she was doing. I thought she was getting scene tape. I can't recall, though. That might have been knowledge after the fact. Then the next, I parked my vehicle. Not sure if I was on the north or south side of the street. But when I exited, started going westbound towards the incident, then I next came in contact with Officer McPherson, who was also putting up scene tape. I can't recall verbatim what I asked him or what I said. Probably something similar to what needs to be done or where's the scene. And I can't recall if he gestured or what exactly he had said. But I headed westbound toward the scene. And once I was going or cutting across the yard, I saw what I thought was, I saw an officer on it would have been the west side of the driveway, maybe in the middle of the driveway, I'm not exactly sure. But I thought that was Officer Coy. I'm not exactly sure if it was or not. I thought there was another officer standing next to him or nearby. Again, wasn't sure. I remember asking something to the tune of what needs to be done or how can I help? I'm not exactly sure what I uttered at that point. And one of the two officers pointed towards Mr. Hill, who was laying in the driveway.
Okay.
At that point, about simultaneously, when I looked over in that general direction, Officer Barsati stated something to the effect of, "We need to put cuffs on him." I went over, immediately started assisting, rolling Mr. Hill over. I'm not sure if it was Officer Barsati or another officer that placed the cuffs on.
But, sorry to interrupt, but those weren't your cuffs?
They were not.
Okay, sorry. Please continue.
Then we rolled Mr. Hill back over, and then from that point, there were several officers that started arriving on scene, and, or maybe were already there. I'm not exactly sure of when officers arrived. There were a couple that went into the garage and did a quick sweep of that. And I think even I think if you see on the body camera, I believe I took 1 or 2 steps in there and shined my flashlight around.
What were you looking for when you shined your flashlight around?
Well, we didn't know, at that point, I didn't know what was going on. And it can be heard in my body camera several times that I've asked during the incident what was going on, or does anyone have any idea what's, what we're looking for?
Why is that important to you, or are you even asking that question?
Because the scene security, there could be other issues that cause harm to anyone that's there on the scene.
Okay. And so that's important for you to know, to help you do your job?
Yes.
And so at this point in time, you're on the scene, you have cuffed Mr. Hill, but you still don't know what's going on.
That's correct.
All right, and you're actively inquiring, asking people, asking other officers, I'm sorry?
Not repeatedly, but I'd asked, the duration while I was on scene, I'd asked multiple times.
Okay. You stated that you took a couple of steps in the garage and looked for weapons and things of that sort?
Well, I said I believe, I think that I stepped, or went into the garage. There were a couple other officers that can be seen on the body camera, if I recall correctly, that were looking into the garage. Whether I just moved my flashlight in their direction or actually went in there, we would be looking for anything, whether it's weapons or people. Any kind of evidence that might help understand the situation.
All right. Are there like 3 objectives that you have, or that are in your mind when you arrive on a scene such as this?
Well, if you're referring to what we previously discussed, one of the things that after this incident, there was something that I put on our whiteboard in our
Objection, Your Honor.
All right. Excuse us a moment, ladies and gentlemen. Please approach. You may be seated, everyone. Thank you. All right, if you could rephrase.
All right, thank you, Your Honor. So, Officer Bramford, when you were on the scene, did you have like 3 objectives that were important to you, such as securing the scene, rendering aid, and preservation of evidence?
There's actually more than that. When we spoke, I informed you of the 3 that I put up on our board to remind individuals, but there are actually, I believe, 9.
Okay, well, let's talk about the top 3 because those would be the most important, right?
Arguably,
Okay, so what would be the first thing?
scene security.
Okay, and what would that entail?
That would entail, at that point, any officer on scene would typically keep their firearm out, still looking for any kind of threat that might be present, whether they're sweeping an area or searching an area, whatever the incident calls for.
Okay. What about the next one, rendering aid?
Rendering aid, what's the question, sir?
Talk about that and its importance.
Well, the importance of rendering aid is kind of self-explanatory. It's to render aid to individuals who might need it, but the rendering aid is not exactly what is spelled out in our directives.
Okay. And preservation of evidence?
Yes, that is farther on down the list, so that's not technically number 3. I don't know all 9 of them in exact order, but that would be farther on down the list. There's others that would be like witnesses. If you find any witnesses, separate witnesses, safeguard evidence, things of that nature.
Okay. So just to be clear, there's really a checklist and a flow chart of how these things are supposed to go.
There's a list listed in, actually it's in several different places in our directives or training circulars or even supervisor's manual. There are different lists and most of them do not mirror each other.
Okay. Moving on. So what did you do after you placed the cuffs or assisted in the cuffs being placed on Mr. Hill? What did you do then?
Well, as I said, there were a couple officers, and like I said, I can't recall if I stepped into the garage, but there were some of those that searched the garage, and then a majority of the other officers, or actually, from what I can recall, all the other officers from that area where I was in front of the garage went into either around the house or into the house. I'm not exactly sure because I was not with them. I stayed with Mr. Hill's where he was located and kept my flashlight on him.
Okay. And at some point, a sergeant came and told you to do chest compressions?
That's correct.
Okay, and you did that?
I did.
Did you have gloves on you at the time?
I believe I did.
And how long, so you did chest compressions until the medic arrived?
Once they arrived, they asked how long I was doing chest compressions. I believe I told them 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes or something similar. And I believe they had someone else take my place before. I'm not sure if it was another medic or another officer that took my place.
Okay, and then the medics arrived on scene?
Well, the medics were the ones that asked that question. So I don't know when they said, they asked how long, because you don't want someone doing chest compressions for too long. You become fatigued. So they had, I don't know if it was another officer or another medic that was instructed to take over for me.
Okay, thank you. And you know Adam Coy, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you see him in the courtroom? Stipulate ID?
Okay,
Thank you.
all right.
Your Honor, I have no further questions for this witness.
Okay, okay. ID is stipulated. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Pearson. Cross-examination?
May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Good morning, Officer Branford.
Good morning.
My name is Mark Collins, along with Caitlin Stevens. We represent Mr. Coy. Appreciate you being here today. I don't know if you look familiar. I don't know if we formally met, but we talked on the phone.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And thank you for your service. Appreciate your service, military service. So the run you were initially on was a a robbery in progress, right?
That's correct.
So when you're heading there, it turned out it wasn't a robbery, correct?
Yes,
And that happens a lot, doesn't it?
it does.
You're sent out on a run what you think something is, but it doesn't turn out to be that way, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you have to be ready for whatever you encounter at that scene.
That's correct.
And is it fair to say that, have you responded to shots fired scenes before?
Yes, sir.
And is it fair to say, and I know there's outliers, but it's usually pretty chaotic or usually not a lot, people, arriving officers tend to not know what's going on, correct?
That's correct.
And, hey, what's going on, that's not uncommon in where shots fired responses for officers getting there who weren't there originally, correct?
It's not uncommon. That's correct.
And then when you first got there and you came up, you handcuffed the person that was in the floor of the garage.
I assisted, yes.
And that's based on training because that person can still be a threat.
That's correct.
Okay, so it's not something you do to be mean or anything like that, or it's what you initially did, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And then, for your 13 years as a police officer, is it fair to say you rely upon your reasonable suspicion analysis?
Oh, just to correct real quick, it's just 12 years.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
In your 12 years, you were trained and you have to rely on your process for when you believe you have reasonable articulable suspicion, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what that means to you.
For reasonable suspicion?
Yes.
Well, there are two different types of, two primary types of ways you determine what kind of incident or what authority you have as a law enforcement officer. There's reasonable suspicion and there's probable cause. Probable cause being the higher of the two that gives you authority to arrest an individual. It would be like hard evidence, something that is something that you can either concrete or evidence that shows that this person can be arrested. Reasonable suspicion, a little bit lower than that, is more what you would consider inclination. You have a sense, or you see things. For example, if I'm driving behind a car, it's easier to explain an example. If I'm driving in my cruiser and I see someone going over the speed limit and swerve out of their lane, I have reasonable suspicion that they could potentially be intoxicated. That could be one explanation. That gives that inclination that there's something going on. If I pull the individual over and do field sobriety tests and then further they take a blood alcohol content, breathalyzer, and they are found to be over the limit, then I've got that hard evidence that leads me into probable cause for arrest. So.
Well done, appreciate it. So basically, it gives you a duty to investigate.
Yes, sir.
And you have to investigate, correct?
Yes.
And many times when you investigate your reasonable suspicion, it turns out that it was nothing at all.
Yes, sir.
Sometimes it leads you to investigate more.
That's correct.
Like in the OVI stop, you might ask them to do the field sobriety test. If they had an explanation, oh, hey, this is what happened, you may be like, okay, you're fine, right?
That's correct.
And then sometimes you actually solve a crime or help, then go to the probable cause.
That's correct.
Okay, all right. And you'd use that every day that you're on the patrol?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And also, you participated in the shoot, don't shoot scenarios with firearms training, correct?
Yes, I have before.
That's a controlled environment, right?
It is.
Very well lit.
Yes.
And the object is to try to have people
Actually, there are different types of fire. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't.
Very good. And actually, you're trying to train off, or you're trying to receive training that allows you to be more, comfortable is not the word, have more exposure to split-second decisions.
That's correct.
And you have to decide between an actual threat and a non-threat, right?
Yes, sir.
An actual threat could be one thing. There can also be a perceived threat, correct?
Yes, sir.
And both of those can be deadly, correct?
Yes.
And based on your training, if you perceive a deadly threat, you don't have to wait, do you?
No,
Action's faster than reaction, correct?
action beats reaction.
You don't have to wait for someone to thrust the knife at you or pull the trigger.
Negative.
Okay. And if you reasonably, or if you perceive that, you're allowed to respond, and you're not trained to injure somebody, correct?
You're trained to stop the threat.
Okay. You're not trained to kill somebody, right?
Negative.
And so whatever, so in the course, if the sheet goes down or the machine turns sideways, that's when the threat is stopped.
That's correct.
And every situation could be different. Could be one bullet, could be unload the entire clip, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. May I have a moment, Your Honor?
You may.
My co-counsel said I've covered everything. Thank you, Officer Branford. Appreciate you being here. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. Branford. The state has no further questions. Officer Branford, my apologies.
Okay. Officer, you can step down.
Your Honor.
State may call their next witness. Morning. Morning. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, as you shall answer unto God under the pains and penalties of perjury? You may be seated. All right, there is a microphone. It's important that you speak into the microphone so that the ladies and gentlemen of the jury can hear you. Okay. It's also important that you respond verbally. Sometimes it's difficult to interpret. All right, so for the record, if you please state your name, spelling your last.
Paul Hill, Hill.
Thank you. You may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. It's still morning, so I can say good morning.
Morning.
Where are you employed?
Upper Arlington Fire Department,
And how long have you been employed there?
7 years and 2 months.
And what is your title?
Firefighter, paramedic.
What do those duties include of a firefighter and paramedic?
To do any tasks needed for the department, whether it comes to fire or medical, depending on which truck I'm on for the day.
Can you just give us a few examples?
From a medic standpoint, we take all emergency calls, any 911 calls.
Okay. And what shift do you currently work?
I'm on 2 unit, work 24 hours on, 48 hours off.
What are your current, do you have days off, or does it just alternate depending on, I'm sorry, do you have specific days off, or does it just alternate depending on if you've worked the prior 24?
I have specific days off, so work 1 on, 2 off, and then sometimes we do work overtime and trades and things like that.
Okay. So back in December of 2020, were you working as a firefighter paramedic back then?
Yes, I was working as paramedic in charge on the ambulance.
Okay. So back in December of 2020, what station were you assigned to?
Station 72, which is on Reed Road.
All right. And can you tell us just generally kind of what the area is that provides service to, or what the boundaries are?
Yes, Henderson Road is our north boundary. Riverside Drive is our west boundary. Kenny Road is our east boundary, and Zollinger Road is our south.
Okay. Now, is Oberlin Drive considered part of your boundaries?
No, it's on the east side of Kenny Road, so it is not ours.
Okay. Do you sometimes end up on runs that are outside of what Station 72 would typically cover?
Frequently.
Okay. And what happens so to alert you that you are being dispatched to a run that's outside of your boundaries?
So if we get a mutual aid call, the city, specifically say City of Columbus or whichever department, they would call NREC, which is located in Dublin, by phone, and find to ask if our vehicles are available for mutual aid. Then if we are, they would dispatch us the same way they typically would do. We would get a pre-alert announcement in the fire station, and then we would be dispatched on the call.
And can you explain for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury just a little bit who don't probably know how the system works, kind of like how that dispatch system does work, and a little bit more about how you get notified?
So when our dispatcher receives the phone call, they will put out the pre-alert. It's very general. It's just basically letting us know that a call is coming in. It could say ill person, injured person, allergic reaction. It's just a general subject. From there, we start moving to the trucks, and then when we get into our trucks, typically by the time we get there, we have detailed notes of what we're going on, what's going on in the scene, any patient information they may have, any known history they may have, and if any medical personnel are on scene or PD or anything else.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to back up just a little bit. Were you working your regular shift on the late night of December 21st, early morning hours of December 22nd, 2020?
I was. My shift started at 7:30 on December 21st, and I was set to get off December 22nd at 7:30
Okay.
in the morning.
So you mentioned earlier that you were the paramedic in charge that day.
Correct.
For Station 72. What does the paramedic in charge do?
It would be my responsibility to document anything that goes on, and during patient care, it's my responsibility to determine how care is done.
Okay. Are you often responsible for writing reports as well?
That's expected when medic in charge.
Okay. All right. Now, you were talking a little bit about receiving information about a run. Is there a difference between the amount of information or the type of information that you receive when it comes directly from Upper Arlington versus when it comes from one of those mutual aid dispatches from another jurisdiction?
Yeah, so when it comes from an Upper Arlington run, we typically get names, phone numbers, age. If the person has a key code to get in the garage or something like that, all that information will be included. And if we have history with that patient, we may get some more information from previous runs. When it comes from Columbus, it's usually pretty vague. It'll just kind of give us a general sense of what we're going on, but not much more than that.
Okay. And on this particular date that we're talking about, were you dispatched on a run at around 2 a.m. in the morning?
Yeah, our dispatch received the call at 1:59 a.m. and we were dispatched at 1:59 a.m.
And did that call come from whom?
Came from Columbus to NREC, who then dispatched us.
Okay. All right, and what information did you receive?
We were told that there was a shooting involving an officer and that the scene was clear to enter. We did not know if the officer shot or was shot.
Okay, so you just knew that there was an officer-involved shooting, but you didn't know which, I guess, party was doing the shooting. Is that fair?
Correct.
Okay, all right. And you said that you received information that the scene was clear?
Yes.
Can you explain to us what the significance of that information is, why you need that information?
It's in our SOPs or standard operating procedures that the fire department does not enter any scene if it's any type of act of violence until PD tells us it is safe to enter.
And this may seem obvious, but why is that?
Just for our safety.
Okay, so it's part of your procedure that you can't enter a scene until it's been declared safe by police.
Correct.
Now, that call that you received, or the dispatch that went out to you at 1:59, do you recall the address that you were sent to?
I don't remember the exact address. I just remember Oberlin Drive. From the in-charge standpoint, really don't pay attention to the address.
Does 1054 sound about right? 1054 Oberlin?
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, you indicated that the call came in around 1:59, correct?
Correct.
Do you know approximately how long it took you to get to the scene?
About in between 2 and 3 minutes.
All right. Once you got to that scene, were you allowed to go straight in?
Yes.
And then at that point, what did you do?
As we pulled up on scene, do you want me to explain
Yes,
this
please.
the whole process? Okay. As we arrived on scene, there were multiple cop cars as we pulled in, got to the driveway, got out of the truck, went towards the patient immediately, just noticed CPR was being done, which allowed me to know that we were going to be working an arrest, cardiac arrest. From there, I tried to get information from PD. I was unable to get all the information. The cops that were on scene said they had just arrived and didn't know all the details. The police officer who was doing compressions, I asked him how long he had been doing compressions. He said 2 minutes. And according to AHA, American Heart Association, you want to change out providers every 2 minutes so that way you get good compressions. People get tired as they go along. I asked him to switch out with another officer on scene. Then I checked for a pulse, a carotid pulse. There was no pulse. His eyes were dilated. From there, my partner brought our AutoPulse and cot. We got everything ready. AutoPulse is a machine that does manual compressions for us, so we don't have to do them. It opens up more hands to be able to work. I had the officers stop compressions to take the handcuffs off, so that way we could appropriately put him on the device. We moved him from there into our truck, and then we transported him to Riverside. En route, we attempted an IO interosseous, which is putting a needle in the leg, which allows us to give medications. It was unsuccessful. We got a IV in his arm, but by the time we got to the hospital, by the time that was successful, we were going into the hospital, so we did not administer any medications. We did not have a route to do so. As we arrived at the hospital, I got out of the truck and went in first to go into the room where he would be going, so that way I could give a report to everybody in the room. As I was done giving a report, my partner and Columbus medics were bringing him in, and we transferred care.
Okay.
Oh, and then also Columbus medics showed up on scene as we were putting him on the auto pulse, so they assisted in that.
Okay. Do you ultimately know what happened to that individual?
He was shot.
And as far as his injury or his status, do you ultimately know what happened to him?
He deceased.
All right. So I want to back up just a little bit. We've been talking about he. I'm assuming that this was a male patient, correct?
Yes, correct.
All right. And do you recall, with a little more detail, where he was located when you approached him, where you found him?
Yeah, he was located in the driveway, just outside of the garage.
All right. And I believe you indicated he had a gunshot wound or more than one?
Yes. From initial assessment, it looked like he was potentially shot in the right leg. There was a large amount of blood there, and then also in the chest and abdomen area, there was also a large pooling of blood.
All right. Did he have any vital signs while you were there?
He had no carotid pulse when I checked, and we hooked him to our heart monitor, which showed asystole.
Do you recall any items nearby where he was located on the ground?
I recall a cell phone near him, and as well as keys.
And I think you mentioned this briefly. Were there other emergency vehicles on the scene at the time that you arrived or shortly after you arrived?
Shortly after Medic 19 arrived.
Would Medic 19 be Columbus or?
Yes, sorry, Columbus Medic 19.
Okay. One moment.
Yes, you may.
Nothing further, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ambler. Cross-examination?
Thank you, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Hill.
Morning.
My name is Caitlin Stevens, and I, along with my partner, Mr. Collins, represent Mr. Coy in this action. If at any time I go too fast or you don't understand my question, please just ask me to rephrase.
Okay.
Have you testified in court before, sir?
First time.
I want to talk about your duty as a paramedic, and congrats on your first time testifying in court. As a paramedic, you're trained to respond to gunshot wounds, correct?
Correct.
And sir, in this particular case, you weren't interviewed until 8 days after the fact by BCI agents, right?
I don't know the amount of time, but it was after.
It was after the incident. It was not on December 22nd, 2020, right?
Correct.
And you were in charge, you said, you were the paramedic in charge of Paramedic 72, correct?
Correct.
Your responsibilities as that paramedic in charge include writing a report, right?
Correct.
And it obviously includes responding to scenes
Correct.
and treating gunshot wounds, right?
Correct.
I want to talk to you about the system that you spoke with Ms. Amlin about with respect to Upper Arlington communicating with you, going through that NTRAC to getting dispatched. You would agree with me that you're just provided limited information, right?
Correct.
And so that report is really you taking down those details that you compile as paramedic in charge, correct?
Correct.
Now, when you got to the scene, you stated that there was an officer who was doing chest compressions, correct?
Correct.
And he advised that he had been doing chest compressions for 2 minutes, right?
Correct.
And so you advised him to switch with somebody for chest compression purposes, correct?
Yes.
And you said you remember a set of keys near the victim's head, correct?
Yes.
You've gone to other shooting scenes and responded to other shooting scenes before, right?
Correct.
And so it's not uncommon where a person involved is actually handcuffed even though they're a victim, right?
Correct.
You mentioned part of your responsibilities in this case was writing a report.
Yes.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Sir, I am approaching you with what has been marked as Defendant's Exhibit 2. Let the record reflect that I have handed the witness what has been previously marked for identification purposes as Defendant's Exhibit 2.
Okay, hold on one second. Okay, Mr. Collins was doing alphabets, just so that there's no, less confusion.
This will be admitted, the alphabet won't. I'll switch to number.
Okay, all right. So Defense Exhibit 2.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, you had an opportunity to review that document, correct?
Yes.
That is the report that you authored as part of your responsibilities in responding to a scene on December 22nd, 2024, right?
Yes.
And that is a fair and accurate copy of the full report that you authored back on December 22nd, 2020?
Yes.
And you do this as a part of every time you are a medic in charge, correct?
Yes.
So it's part of your regularly conducted business activities that you have to do, that you're required to do as a paramedic in charge, correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I have permission to publish this report to the jury?
Any objection?
No objection.
Okay, you may.
I want to review some details in this report, sir. It talks about the times that you were dispatched. You would agree with me, right?
Yes.
And it says you were dispatched, or you received the call at 1:59, right?
Yes.
And going down that line, you were dispatched also at 1:59, correct?
Yes.
And you were en route at 2:02, correct?
Correct.
You were at the scene at 2:05, correct?
Yes.
And you were told at that time the scene had been cleared and it was safe for you to enter, correct?
Correct.
So by 2:06 a.m., you were at the patient, right?
Correct.
You noted additional details on this report, correct? Like where you were responding, that address?
That's put in by dispatch, yes.
Okay, so that part was put in by dispatch. It was also then noted on your report that the race of the victim was white, correct?
Correct.
Fair to say that you were working on this patient at 1 o'clock in the morning? 2 o'clock in the morning?
Yes, two.
And it was very dark when you were working on this patient, correct?
It was.
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
You may.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hill. I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you. Redirect?
Nothing, Your Honor, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. All right, Mr. Hill, you can step down. Okay. All right, counsel, please approach off the record. Put the audio back on. All right. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and break for lunch at this time. If I could get you back in the jury room before 1 a.m., we'll get started 1 a.m. That's the same thing. They did the same thing yesterday, 1 p.m. We can get you back into the jury room before 1 p.m. Again, remember the admonitions that I've given you with respect to discussing this case among yourselves or with anyone else. Please enjoy your lunch. See you back around 1. All rise for the jury.